September 19, 1944, 0730 hours, Bion-le-Petit, Lorraine, France. A dense morning fog enveloped the Lorraine countryside, reducing visibility to barely 30 meters. Panther tank commander Karl Hoffmann scanned the mist with his periscope, a growing unease gnawing at him. His hands were not cold from the September air, but from a recent extraordinary sight. Through a rare clearing in the gray haze, an American vehicle had appeared almost magically, discharged its weapon twice, and disappeared before his gunner could bring the turret around. To the left, the smoldering remains of another Panther confirmed that this was no trick of the light. Earlier that morning, 42 Panthers of the 113th Panzer Brigade had embarked on an offensive with absolute confidence. The Panther, with its 75mm high-velocity gun and sharply angled armor, was considered the pinnacle of German armored design. These crews had been taught repeatedly that American tanks were inferior, hastily built, mechanically unreliable, and operated by green crews who relied more on numbers than tactical skill. The battlefield near Araucourt, however, would violently challenge all assumptions that German armored units had carried from the Eastern Front. The vehicle Hoffmann had glimpsed, later identified as the M18 Hellcat, demonstrated a completely different approach to tank warfare. Rather than relying on heavy armor, the Americans had emphasized speed, mobility, and tactical flexibility, undermining the conventional German doctrine. The genesis of the M18 Hellcat can be traced back to December 1941, when Lieutenant Colonel Andrew Davis Bruce, head of the newly established Tank Destroyer Center at Fort Meade, Maryland, analyzed German blitzkrieg operations with an engineer's precision. Bruce's insight was groundbreaking. Instead of meeting enemy tanks with equal weight and firepower, a new class of vehicle could strike swiftly and vanish before a response could be organized. This philosophy dictated the design priorities of the new tank destroyer: speed first, firepower second, and crew efficiency third. Armor, though not ignored entirely, was deliberately secondary, a notion that would have been considered reckless in German military circles, where successive designs, from the Panzer III to Panther to Tiger, pursued ever thicker armor and larger guns. The Ordnance Department quickly issued specifications for a highly mobile tank destroyer, incorporating torsion bar suspension, a Continental R975 engine, and initially a 37mm gun. Iterative prototyping led to the adoption of a 76mm gun, resulting in the T-76 motor carriage, the vehicle that would ultimately be designated the M18. By July 1943, production M18s were emerging from Buick's plant in Flint, Michigan. The resulting vehicle weighed roughly 20 tons, considerably lighter than the 33-ton M4 Sherman chassis that shared its 350 to 400 horsepower Wright R975 radial aircraft engine. This combination allowed for unprecedented speed in a tracked vehicle, with the Hellcat capable of reaching 55 miles per hour or 89 kilometers per hour, and some reports suggesting up to 60 miles per hour under ideal conditions. In comparison, the Panther's maximum road speed of 29 miles per hour or 46 kilometers per hour was modest, and even on rough terrain it could not sustain 40 miles per hour. German armored dominance had been rooted in combined arms tactics honed during the invasions of Poland and France. Panzer divisions functioned as integrated formations, combining tanks, mechanized infantry, artillery, and engineers. The tanks themselves were designed as breakthroughs, armored fists meant to rupture enemy lines and wreak havoc behind them. While speed mattered, the emphasis was on survivability. Each new generation of German tanks grew heavier, more protected, and more powerfully armed. The Panther, introduced in 1943, weighed 45 tons with up to 100 millimeters of frontal turret armor, while the Tiger II, entering service in 1944, increased these numbers to 70 tons and 180 millimeters, respectively. In contrast, American doctrine, codified in Field Manual 18-5 and refined throughout 1943, represented a strategic inversion. Tank destroyers were to be held in reserve, deployed rapidly to counter enemy armor concentrations. They were not intended for head-to-head duels. Instead, mobility allowed them to strike from flanking positions, target enemy vehicles' vulnerable sides or rear, and then redeploy before an effective counterattack could be mounted. The M18 Hellcat was the embodiment of this doctrine, a machine designed not for prolonged engagement, but for decisive, fleeting encounters that could shift the battlefield's balance in moments. By September 1944, these principles were being tested in the fields of Lorraine. The Americans' embrace of speed and tactical ingenuity confronted the heavily armored, doctrine-bound Panzer crews with a stark new reality. Traditional armored supremacy was no longer guaranteed, and the future of tank warfare was being rewritten in real time. The M18 Hellcat originated within the design department of Harley Earl at General Motors, specifically under the Buick Motor Division. Earl, renowned for his groundbreaking automotive designs, applied his expertise to military vehicles, resulting in a combat platform that prioritized speed and agility over conventional armor. The Hellcat resembled a high-performance automobile fitted with a formidable cannon rather than a standard tank. Its first operational deployment occurred in Italy, where a small contingent of 5 T-70 variants was assigned to the 894th Tank Destroyer Battalion during the Anzio beachhead operations in the spring of 1944. The challenging terrain of Italy, characterized by narrow roads and steep hills, seemed at odds with the M18's design philosophy, yet the vehicle quickly demonstrated its tactical advantages. German forces encountered the Hellcat's speed and maneuverability with surprise, but initial skirmishes were limited in scope, and the lessons learned did not immediately influence German tactical planning elsewhere. Consequently, when preparing for the anticipated Allied invasion in France, the Wehrmacht continued to focus predominantly on the threat posed by larger, heavily armored Sherman tanks and tank destroyers like the M10, which, although more mobile than German tanks, still conformed to conventional engagement doctrines. By September 1944, the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion, now equipped with M18 Hellcats, had joined the U.S. 4th Armored Division near Ericourt in Lorraine. At this point, German forces were operating under a critical misjudgment regarding the capabilities of their American counterparts. The newly formed 113th Panzer Brigade, established on September 4, 1944, had been deployed to Sargeberg by September 16 with 42 Panther tanks. Many of its crewmen were seasoned veterans of the Eastern Front, having previously faced Soviet T-31s and KV-1s in engagements where armor thickness and firepower often dictated the outcome. The 704th had initially trained on the M3 gun motor carriage, but underwent extensive testing and refinement before receiving production Hellcats. The battalion devoted considerable time to developing tactics that would leverage the Hellcat's remarkable speed, optimizing it for rapid flanking maneuvers and swift target engagement. On the morning of September 19th, thick fog enveloped the battlefield as the 113th Panzer Brigade advanced cautiously towards Ericourt, expecting minimal resistance from American screening forces. German reconnaissance had noted the presence of Sherman tanks, but detected no substantial anti-tank deployments. At 0715 hours, Lieutenant Edwin Leiper commanded a platoon of 4 M18 Hellcats from Company C 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion, positioned strategically near Richour-le-Petit en route to Manor. When a Panther's gun barrel emerged from the mist at approximately 30 feet, the Hellcats were ready to engage. The Germans' first awareness of the Hellcats came as an M18 accelerated from a standstill to 30 miles per hour in mere seconds, a feat that would have taken a Panther nearly half a minute. Exploiting this velocity, the M18s swiftly moved to a flanking position and delivered fire into the sides of the nearest Panther before the German turret had fully rotated toward the threat. Within just 5 minutes, 5 Panthers of the 113th Panzer Brigade were destroyed with the loss of only a single Hellcat. The engagement highlighted the tactical asymmetry between the two vehicles. The Panther's turret, weighing almost 7 tons and armed with a long-barreled 75mm cannon, required roughly a minute for a complete rotation using its hydraulic traverse system, with speeds further reduced at low engine RPMs intended to minimize detection. In contrast, the M18's turret, slightly over 2 tons, allowed crews to track and engage targets almost instantaneously, vastly outpacing even the manually rotated M10. Additionally, the M18 proved mechanically resilient, capable of extensive operations with minimal maintenance, whereas the Panther was prone to chronic mechanical issues, particularly final drive failures, as the drive components were stressed by the heavier-than-intended 45-ton hull. During the September 19th encounter, several Panthers were abandoned due to mechanical breakdowns while attempting to pursue the more agile M18s, underlining the combination of superior mobility, tactical innovation, and mechanical reliability that defined the Hellcats' battlefield performance. As the early morning haze began to thin around 0900 hours, the organized precision of American tank destroyer operations became unmistakably evident. The M18 Hellcats functioned not as isolated units, but as elements of a cohesive, coordinated formation. Through continuous radio communication, crews directed each other toward enemy targets, shared warnings about potential threats, and synchronized movements for maximum tactical effect. Under the command of Captain Tom Evans, the lead platoon of Company C drew the attention of German armored forces, deliberately serving as a decoy while 2 additional platoons maneuvered along the flanks, unseen by the opposing forces. This execution exemplified textbook tank destroyer strategy. One element engaged to fix the enemy in place, while others moved to exploit vulnerabilities. The broader defensive arrangement of the CCA near Aracourt featured a thinly held salient anchored by a network of forward positions manned by armored infantry and combat engineers, all supported by a combination of tanks, tank destroyers, and artillery batteries. Within this framework, the M18s acted as a rapid response striking element, capable of exploiting openings and concentrating fire where it was most effective. By noon on September 19th, the 113th Panzer Brigade's assault had ground to a halt. The M18 platoon continued to engage the retreating Germans, eliminating 10 additional armored vehicles while suffering the loss of 2 of their own. A particularly notable performance came from Sergeant Henry R. Hartmann's M18, which accounted for the destruction of 6 German tanks, predominantly Panthers. The disparity in cost and production time between the 2 forces was stark and bewildering to German commanders. Each Panther, valued at 117,100 Reichsmarks and requiring 2,000 labor hours to complete, was being neutralized by M18s that cost only $57,500 and could be assembled in a fraction of the time. As German forces faltered due to poor tactical placement, their exposed flanks were quickly targeted by Sherman tanks, which eliminated 11 enemy vehicles using the lingering fog as cover. The Germans, deprived of sufficient reconnaissance, had inadvertently advanced into a pre-prepared kill zone. The M18's speed was not merely a function of its powerful engine. Every component of the vehicle was engineered to optimize rapid maneuvering and immediate combat readiness. Its engine, mounted on steel rollers, could be effortlessly detached by maintenance crews, serviced on the lowered rear engine cover, and reinstalled. A well-trained crew could replace the entire power plant in under 2 hours, compared to a full day required for a Panther engine replacement. The torsion bar suspension provided a smoother and more stable ride than the leaf spring or interleaved road wheel systems common to German tanks, enabling the Hellcat to sustain speeds up to 40 miles per hour over rough terrain, speeds that would force a Panther to crawl at 10 miles per hour to avoid track damage. Further enhancing battlefield effectiveness, the M18 incorporated an automatic torque transmission derived from Buick's civilian automobile technology, freeing drivers from complex gear changes and allowing them to focus solely on maneuvering. In contrast, Panther crews had to manage manual transmissions, demanding precise double clutching and careful timing under combat stress. Communications superiority also played a pivotal role. Each M18 was equipped with an SCR 508 FM radio, facilitating instantaneous voice coordination between vehicles and with supporting units. German armored formations, by comparison, often relied on a single radio per platoon, supplemented by signal flags or prearranged routines. This technological gap magnified the Hellcats' tactical agility, enabling American crews to dynamically coordinate attacks, adjust formations, call out targets, and issue warnings in real time, a capability that decisively contributed to the operational success of the day. During this period, German tank crews generally operated in isolation, each commander making tactical decisions solely based on what was visible through their limited vision ports. By September 20th, the arrival of the 111th Panzer Brigade introduced an unprecedented challenge. German armored units faced a level of fear that they had not previously encountered, a threat from an enemy they could not adequately engage or predict. These soldiers were veterans of some of the fiercest clashes on the Eastern Front, having encountered T-34 tanks in Ukraine and endured the catastrophic confrontations at Kursk. They had been conditioned to trust in German technical superiority and battlefield discipline to offset numerical disadvantages. The Panther tank, designed for dominance, had reinforced this confidence. It could obliterate virtually any Allied tank while remaining largely impervious to return fire. That sense of invincibility, however, was abruptly undermined. The M18 Hellcat's superior speed introduced tactical dilemmas that existing German training had never addressed. Tanks intended for offensive operations found themselves on the defensive against an opponent that refused static engagement. Hellcat crews discovered that a precisely aimed shell at the junction of the Panther's mantlet and vision plate could ricochet into the driver's compartment, neutralizing the tank and its crew. Executing such maneuvers required close-range engagement and precise marksmanship, techniques that would have been suicidal against a more responsive adversary. The Panther's slow turret traverse, sluggish acceleration, and restricted visibility rendered them particularly vulnerable to these fast-moving, nimble attackers. German commanders attempted several tactical adaptations. Some units deployed Panthers in paired formations, positioned back-to-back to cover multiple approaches. While theoretically increasing defensive coverage, this strategy forced them into stationary positions, ceding initiative to American forces. It also depended on seamless communication between vehicles, a capability that many German tanks lacked. Underlying these tactical difficulties was a stark industrial contrast. The M18 was not only faster, but also simpler to manufacture, maintain, and replace. Production of the Hellcat began in July 1943, and by October 1944, 257 units had been completed. Monthly output peaked at 250 vehicles in January 1944, with each tank requiring roughly 500 man-hours to assemble. In contrast, a Panther demanded around 2,000 man-hours, specialized tools, skilled labor, and rare materials. Its Maybach engine was meticulously hand-built, making the tank a labor-intensive product that limited the pace of replacements. American factories could produce a replacement M18 for every one lost at Arikart in under 2 days, whereas German Panther production, even at its absolute peak, yielded just 380 vehicles per month across all fronts, including training and reserve units. Consequently, the loss of 39 Panthers at Arikart equated to over a week's total production, a significant strategic blow. As the battle progressed through late September, American crews refined their approach. M18 units began to operate in coordinated formations, leveraging speed to strike German positions from multiple directions simultaneously. On the morning of September 22nd, these revised tactics were showcased when Hellcats sprinted across open terrain toward German defenses near Coincart.
Panthers, unprepared for such rapid maneuvers, managed only a few inaccurate shots before the M18s reached effective firing range. The psychological impact on German crews was severe. They could hear the approaching engines from over a kilometer away, yet there was little they could do in response. The M18s traversed this distance in under a minute, moving too quickly for German gunners to accurately track them.
An additional advantage for the Americans was mechanical reliability. Crews reported that their vehicles could endure hundreds of miles under harsh combat conditions without significant repair. In contrast, the Panther was plagued by maintenance issues. By September 22nd, reports from the 113th Panzer Brigade indicated that many losses were attributable to mechanical breakdowns rather than enemy fire. Final drives failed under the strain of rapid maneuvering, and transmissions overheated when drivers attempted sudden acceleration to counter Hellcat assaults. The M18 Hellcat, constructed using American mass production methods and strict reliability standards, demonstrated remarkable durability on the battlefield. Its air-cooled radial engine, though noisy, was highly resilient, while the automatic transmission demanded minimal upkeep. The torsion bar suspension, designed with simplicity in mind, reduced mechanical failures significantly. On September 24th, Lieutenant Colonel Crichton Abrams, leading the 37th Tank Battalion, orchestrated a coordinated assault with the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion. Sherman tanks were employed to advance methodically, drawing the attention and fire of German defenders, while the M18s leveraged their superior mobility to maneuver through forests and cover. This strategy proved extremely effective. As German Panthers focused on the Shermans at long range, M18s struck from multiple concealed positions, overwhelming the enemy with crossfire that could not be countered efficiently. By the following day, German commanders were beginning to grasp the nature of the new threat. General de Panzer's officer, Hasso von Manteuffel of the 5th Panzer Army, issued revised tactical directives that effectively acknowledged the limitations of their armored doctrine in the face of these highly mobile tank destroyers. The orders instructed units not to engage in mobile combat with the M18s, thereby reducing the Panther, designed as a fast defensive platform, to a largely static defensive role. This shift marked a significant loss of initiative for German forces, confirming that superior armor and firepower alone no longer guaranteed battlefield dominance. By the conclusion of the Battle of Aracourt, the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion had destroyed 39 German tanks while suffering the loss of only 4 M18s, with 3 additional vehicles damaged. This outcome dramatically validated the American tank destroyer doctrine, demonstrating that agility and tactical versatility could counteract the conventional advantages of German armor. The M18 epitomized this philosophy, functioning not as a heavily fortified combatant, but as a precise, mobile weapon capable of striking decisively and disengaging before retaliation. The Hellcats' impact extended into December 1944 during the Battle of the Bulge. German forces achieved initial breakthroughs through surprise, but M18-equipped battalions rapidly deployed to critical locations, once again capitalizing on speed to disrupt enemy operations. A notable example occurred with Team D. Sorry of the 10th Armored Division, assigned to defend Noville. With only 4 M18s from the 75th Tank Destroyer Battalion available for support, the task force successfully engaged elements of the German 2nd Panzer Division. The M18's high-speed maneuvering to intercept enemy advances remains one of the few documented instances where the vehicle's top velocity was decisive in preemptive positioning. German Panthers and Tigers frequently encountered M18s that had already reached advantageous locations, allowing U.S. forces to concentrate firepower at critical moments before enemy commanders could adapt. In total, M18s claimed 526 enemy kills across all theaters of operations, 498 in Europe, 17 in Italy, and 11 in the Pacific, with a European kill-to-loss ratio of 2.3 to 1 and an overall ratio of 2.4 to 1.
These statistics are particularly striking, given that the M18s were more commonly deployed in support roles for infantry rather than in direct tank engagements, yet they consistently maintained exceptional operational effectiveness. The contrast between German and American armored vehicle philosophies was stark. The Panther evolved as a response to the Soviet T-34, emphasizing incremental improvements, thicker sloped armor, a more powerful gun, and greater overall protection. The American approach, by contrast, was revolutionary. Instead of attempting to outmatch enemy armor with similar means, they sought to avoid being hit entirely. The M18 epitomized this philosophy, functioning not as a heavily fortified combatant, but as a precise, mobile weapon capable of striking decisively and disengaging before retaliation. The success of M18s at Aracourt and subsequent engagements provided valuable lessons in military innovation. German tank development followed a linear trajectory: larger guns, stronger armor, incremental enhancements. Whereas the U.S. faced logistical constraints in transporting vehicles across the Atlantic and opted for a fundamentally new approach. The M18 did not attempt to outgun German tanks on their terms. It redefined the battlefield dynamics entirely. Individual M18 crews demonstrated exceptional proficiency in utilizing terrain, timing, and rapid repositioning to exploit the vehicle's capabilities. Sergeant Henry R. Hartman, credited with destroying 6 Panthers on September 19th, became a standard-bearer for Hellcat tactics, demonstrating a method of approach, strike, and immediate withdrawal that became emblematic of effective M18 employment.
Through speed, tactical ingenuity, and efficient design, the M18 Hellcat redefined armored warfare for the Allies, demonstrating that mobility and operational flexibility could decisively challenge even the most advanced enemy tanks. Its legacy illustrates the potential of innovative design philosophies and the tactical creativity of skilled crews to overcome technological disparities. On October 13th, when units of the 11th Panzer Division, reinforced with Tiger I tanks, launched an operation to reclaim Aracourt, the engagement highlighted a critical disparity in mobility and tactics. The Tigers, capable of only 15 miles per hour at top speed, struggled to maneuver effectively, while M18 tank destroyers capitalized on their superior velocity to strike along flanks and vulnerable points. The Tigers' slower turret traverse further hampered their ability to respond to the rapid, fluid attacks of the Hellcats. The M18's development and entry into combat represented a significant departure from traditional armored vehicle programs. From initial concept to operational deployment, the process took under 2 years, an exceptionally brief period for a completely new design. Conceived in Harley Earl's Buick design studio, the vehicle bore the imprint of automotive aesthetics and engineering principles. Earl, renowned for his innovative approach to car design, applied those methods to produce a light, agile, and effective combat vehicle. Production leveraged established automotive assembly techniques. Factory workers experienced in building civilian automobiles could be rapidly retrained to assemble M18s, unlike the German approach that demanded highly skilled craftsmen and specialized tooling. The integration of widely available automotive components contributed to faster, more reliable manufacturing. Technological features of the M18 significantly enhanced battlefield performance. Its fire control apparatus, though less intricate than German optical rangefinders, allowed for quicker target acquisition under fast-paced combat conditions. The independent operation of the periscopic sight enabled commanders to scan for threats while gunners engaged targets, in contrast to German tanks which required full turret rotation for observation, slowing response time and exposing crews to enemy fire. Ammunition storage was also a design strength. Rounds were placed in reinforced bins that minimized the risk of catastrophic explosions if penetrated, allowing crews to survive hits that would have destroyed equivalent German vehicles. This survivability allowed experienced personnel to remain combat effective for longer periods. Throughout 1944 and into 1945, American tank destroyer doctrine evolved in response to operational realities.
Though initial plans envisioned M18 units held in reserve to counter enemy armor strikes, they were frequently deployed in support of infantry divisions, providing both mobile anti-tank coverage and direct fire assistance. This adaptability proved a significant advantage over German armored forces, which adhered to increasingly outdated tactical frameworks. M18 battalions developed specialized techniques for diverse combat scenarios, including urban engagements, forested operations, and river crossings, situations not originally anticipated by designers. By early 1945, German armored units found themselves at a severe disadvantage. Unable to match the mobility of American forces, they were increasingly confined to defensive positions, surrendering initiative and exposing themselves to artillery and air attacks. German production further exacerbated the problem, as Allied bombing campaigns disrupted factories and shortages of raw materials constrained output. Meanwhile, American industrial capacity maintained a consistent stream of M18s and other vehicles, overwhelming German planners.
The M18's influence was clearly demonstrated during the Rhine crossing in March 1945. As German forces attempted to concentrate armor to contest the operation, M18 units were often the first to arrive at critical locations, despite starting from more distant positions. At Remagen, when the Ludendorff Bridge was captured intact, M18s quickly secured bridgehead positions, establishing defensive perimeters before German units could respond. Attempted counterattacks by Panther and Tiger tanks found the Hellcats already positioned in prepared ambushes. The legacy of the M18 extended beyond World War II. During the Korean War, 650 early M18s were converted into M39 armored utility vehicles by removing turrets and installing seating for up to 8 personnel in the open rear compartment, demonstrating the chassis' versatility. In the 1950s, former German officers advising the newly formed West German Bundeswehr consistently endorsed mobile American-style armored systems inspired by the M18, recommending against traditional heavy tanks. The psychological effect on German tank crews persisted well after the war. Veterans consistently ranked the M18 as the most intimidating American armored vehicle, surpassing even the M26 Pershing heavy tank and dedicated tank hunting aircraft such as the P-47 Thunderbolt. The M18's impact was not limited to tactical success. It fundamentally challenged the perception of German armored superiority that had dominated European battlefields since 1940. Its combination of speed, survivability, and doctrinal flexibility exemplified the intersection of industrial capacity and battlefield innovation, shaping the outcome of armored engagements in the latter stages of the war. The tide of armored warfare shifted dramatically with the arrival of the M18 Hellcat, turning hunters into the hunted. German tank crews, once confident in their dominance, were forced to confront a new reality they could scarcely anticipate. The statistics underscore the vehicle's impact. The M18's development began in December 1941, with the first prototype undergoing trials in April 1943. Full-scale production started in July of the same year, reaching its peak in January 1944 with 250 units produced monthly. Production concluded in October 1944, leaving a total of 257 vehicles manufactured. In combat, the M18 was credited with eliminating 526 enemy vehicles, while 216 were lost in action, producing a kill-to-loss ratio of 2.4 to 1. Its mechanical reliability was notable, maintaining an operational readiness rate of 78%. When compared with German tanks, the M18's advantages were striking. On roads, the Hellcat could reach speeds of 55 to 60 miles per hour and maintain 26 miles per hour off-road. By contrast, the Panther managed only 29 miles per hour on roads and 15 miles per hour cross-country. The Tiger 1 and 2 were even slower, with maximum road speeds of 24 miles per hour and 21 miles per hour respectively, and off-road performance of 12 and 10 miles per hour. These differences highlight contrasting design philosophies.
German tanks represented the culmination of decades of incremental improvement, heavily armored, heavily armed, and mechanically sophisticated. Vehicles like the Tiger II embodied the apex of traditional tank design, an evolution rooted in World War I. The Americans, however, took a radically different path. The M18 did not attempt to outmatch German tanks in armor or firepower. Instead, it redefined the role of armored vehicles, emphasizing speed, maneuverability, and reliability over sheer protection.
This approach would leave a lasting imprint on armored warfare doctrine. Modern tanks, such as the Israeli Merkava, the American M1 Abrams, and the German Leopard 2, reflect principles first proven by the M18: mechanical dependability, enhanced situational awareness, and tactical agility. While these post-war main battle tanks are heavily armored, they retain an emphasis on mobility that would have seemed impossible to German engineers during World War II. Veterans from both sides recalled the M18's effects for decades. American tank destroyer crews spoke with pride about the vehicle's capabilities and the revolutionary shift it represented. German veterans, even years later, remembered the frustration and fear of facing a fast, elusive opponent that refused to engage on conventional terms. At a 1985 reunion at Aérocourt, former soldiers retraced the battlefield where the M18 had left its mark. The demonstration of a restored Hellcat, still capable of remarkable speed, elicited a solemn reaction from German veterans, a silent acknowledgement of the profound tactical disruption they had witnessed. The M18 Hellcat's legacy extends beyond its numerical combat successes. The 526 enemy vehicles destroyed, compared with 216 lost vehicles, illustrates only part of its impact. More significant was the psychological and doctrinal effect. German commanders were confronted with the limitations of their established doctrines. Even the most advanced tanks, including Panthers and Tigers, were vulnerable against a highly mobile, reliable, and strategically nimble opponent. The Hellcat proved that victory could come from adaptability, speed, and innovation rather than brute strength or thick armor alone. For German tankers, encounters with the M18 offered enduring lessons. Warfare, much like evolution, does not always favor the strongest, but often rewards the most adaptable. The Hellcat, with its capacity to strike rapidly and disappear, symbolized this principle. Its design demonstrated that armored combat could be transformed through mobility and tactical ingenuity, challenging assumptions about the supremacy of heavily armored vehicles. The M18's contribution to mechanized warfare was thus both practical and conceptual. By undermining the certainty of traditional tank doctrine, it paved the way for a new era in which speed, agility, and situational awareness became central to combat effectiveness. The lessons learned by German crews, preserved in reports and memoirs, stand as a testament to the transformative power of innovation in military strategy. In the end, the Hellcat did more than destroy tanks. It reshapes the philosophy of armored warfare, illustrating that a nimble and inventive force could outmaneuver even the most formidable engineering achievements. The era of heavy tank dominance had been challenged, and the supremacy of speed and adaptability was firmly established on the battlefields of Europe.